Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again,
you're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to foot.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome one and all to show number 2 on the day. It is debate night in America. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular, of course.
hello.
Hello.
Looking forward to this one.
Yeah. It's all on the line tonight. The future of America.
Trumpster blew out his knee in the big game.
Yeah.
But people say he's been working hard, preparing. He's been in the gym.
That's
been
right.
Practicing his insults, his nicknames.
It's all hanging in the balance. All hanging in the balance tonight. Don't you feel like the stakes are really high?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like the stakes are really high
yeah.
tonight.
They say they've upgraded the Kamala AI, so it won't be as off-putting and unnatural tonight.
Yeah, man, I can't imagine being invested in this. Like if I were really invested in the outcome of the presidency, and then I don't mean like how brainwashed do you have to be. I just mean like emotionally, psychologically. Like back when I cared who the president was, I got nervous on a debate night. I was like, "Oh, my guy better not blow it tonight."
For those people, this is going to be like the Eastern Front of debates.
Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, yes,
very tense.
Yes, it's going to be very tense, very tense.
We can only hope they are properly supplied for it.
Taibbi's doing a drinking game. He usually does. Irish bastard. Yeah. Is he Irish?
I don't think so.
I don't even know what Taibbi is. What name is that?
He's half Filipino.
Yeah, but
I forget what his mom is.
I thought it was Irish. What nationality is Taibbi? Is he Irish?
I forget what the other. I forget what his mom is.
Jimmy's live tonight. Savvy's live tonight. Vanguard guys are live tonight. Everybody's live tonight. Everybody who's anybody is live tonight. And we are gonna go off of the ABC News Twitter stream.
I know one person who's not live tonight.
Who's that?
James Earl Jones.
That's right. Yeah, we forgot to do the Twitter. We forgot to do the shout out segment for him today. We said we were going to do that.
Well, here's our tribute.
I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
There you go. Absolutely. Angry Cabbage, thanks for the $1, says, I want some 2 Live Jews merch, please, and thank you. Yeah, we are getting the merch up and running. It should be up and running by the end of the week. That's what we're thinking. Certainly over the weekend, I'll have some time to do it.
That's right. That is some homework I have to do. I have to reach out to some of our graphic designers who sent us designs that did not make the final logo. We'll make the merch, so we will be in touch.
Yep. That'll be a lot of fun. Looking forward to bringing that online.
We have some really cool stuff.
So house rules, folks. We are live on YouTube, live on Rumble, 789 in the Rumble chat, 885 in the YouTube and Twitter chat. Where are we at? 644 YouTube, 241 Twitter, 904 now in total. Getting a crowd in here now. Looking like it'll be a fun night tonight. We are on YouTube and on Rumble. We got Jake in the booth tonight, fielding Rumble rants. We will be taking Super chats as well. Super chats that arrive during the debate will be displayed at the bottom of the screen as super heckles. House rules apply. Anything that is permissible here in East Berlin will be displayed, and anything that is not will not. But feel free to send those in and get your word out and up in lights to help support the show. Peter Monahan, thanks for the $10. Hope you guys have a great show tonight. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be interesting to say the least. All I have to say, keep your hands and feet inside the ride at all times, and we are not responsible. That's right. That's right. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that. Somebody who understands it since snapshot of what's going on with the stock market and crypto right now, and then see what it looks like in a couple days. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that.
It's choppy. It's a choppy month.
It's a choppy month for the market.
People are expecting rate cuts. So then you get news on the rate cuts, it pops. Then the job numbers that make people think that there are going to be rate cuts come in, and then they think there's going to be a recession. So then the market gives up everything from the day before. It's pretty much how it's going right now.
All right. EJ, imagine Jimmy and Do Dissidents on at the same time. It's looking like choosing between your mom and your dad. Yeah, I know how it feels. Yeah, he asked us earlier if we were going live. I think he was going to invite us on his show to watch with him if we weren't. But alas, we got to work. We got to put in a shift. These are the nights. You got to put in your shift here, trying to shill. Thanks to the $1. Master Splinter has also passed away. Rest in peace. Oh, is that true? The voice for Splinter from Ninja Turtles? That's sad. You guys are the anchor. You're the hill.
It always comes in threes.
Not literally. Yeah. Help get me through all the shit I'm dealing with. Thank you so much. Our pleasure, Peter. Thank you for the support.
Thank you, man. That's nice to hear.
And good luck with the surgery. We had good news from Peter today that they think they're optimistic about surgery, so that's wonderful to hear. JM, thank you for the $2. Appreciate that. And the thumbs up. Thank you very much for that. Dustin Price, thanks for the $5. Late night, buy yourself an egg sandwich from the vending machine. There you go. Yes. Thank you. Late night indeed. Only watching because of you. Both candidates are. Yeah, I know what you mean. Dan. Thank you for that, Dan.
Okay, I gotta make sure to cover up the name here. All right, so this is the quality of person that I have for my theater days on my phone.
Debate time. Everyone said good vibes to Kamala. 3 American flags. Yeah. Is that we got American flags?
Yes, 3 American flags. Yes.
What's going on here? Hold on. Let me watch something.
This is why I don't troll the remaining shit libs on my feed, so I can see things like that and make myself feel crazy.
Right. Oh shit! What is this? What the hell's going on? There it is. Okay. Now I think that's good. Okay. Yeah, it was paused for some reason. Yep, this is the debate coverage live. Yep. 1 minute and 10 seconds to showtime, folks. We are about to buckle up. We're about to strap in for an evening of fun-filled entertainment. In the unfortunate, in the unlikely but unfortunate event that YouTube is a bitch and this stream gets throttled, we will still be live on Rumble. So if something happens, find us on Rumble. That's the way we're going to work this tonight. Don't think anything will happen. Everybody seems to be streaming this, so I don't think we'll have a problem. But in case we do, don't think if the YouTube stream crashes, oh no. No, just go over to dodissidents.com/Rumble and find us there where the party will continue uninterrupted on a truly free speech platform. But right now we are at 20 seconds until we get this show on the road. The nice thing about the debates is that, unlike a convention, they keep it pretty strictly timed. It'll start right at 9 and go 90 minutes.
Yeah, this is not going to be like the night of torture where we had the bright idea to try to cover the convention speeches in the evening.
Exactly.
That one time was enough before we dropped that plan.
All righty, folks. Where are you going to have Sam?
Ever.
A historic race for president upended just weeks ago. President Biden withdrawing
We're live.
after
Can
his
everybody hear
last
that
debate.
all right? Russ, you
Donald
can hear
Trump
that?
now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied in the polls nationally and in the key battlegrounds, including right here in
I thought
Pennsylvania.
Michael Jackson
all
passed
still
away.
very much in play. The ABC News presidential debate starts right now.
This is an ABC News special. The most consequential moment of this campaign. Kamala Harris.
Together, we will chart a new way forward.
Donald Trump.
We will soon be a great nation again.
Face to
Donald
face.
Trump.
Historic.
Dude, I don't know why they call it
The
toilet
ABC
paper. It's
News
really for your ass.
presidential debate. Here now,
For your ass. You know who
David
doesn't use
Muir
toilet
and
paper?
Lindsay
Sharks.
Davis.
That's why they have the
Good evening,
advantage.
I'm David Muir.
That's why
Thank you
we
for
have
joining us
to
for
make
tonight's
sure nobody
ABC
ever
News
experiments to give
presidential
sharks
debate. We want to welcome
intelligence.
viewers watching
Because
on
then we'll all
ABC
be dead.
and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this
What do you mean
unprecedented
moments
race
away?
for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now
they gonna
less than
milk
2
this?
months away. For Vice
Oh,
President
no.
Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st.
Cat was named
Of course,
Vagina.
that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this
This
race
is the
has taken
decline
on
of
an
Western
entirely new
civilization, folks,
dynamic.
when they don't
That
start
brings us
debates
to the
on
rules
time.
of tonight's debate.
Damn right.
It used to be
90
9
minutes with
o'clock
two
meant 9
commercial
o'clock.
breaks. No
Not
topics or
we
questions
start
have been
hyping
shared
it at
with the
9 o'clock
campaign.
to sell more
The
ad
candidates will
revenue.
have 2 minutes to
I think
answer
it was
questions,
really
and
when
this
men
is the clock.
stopped
That's what they'll
having
be seeing. 2 minutes
hankies
for
in their
rebuttals
front pocket.
and 1 minute for follow-ups,
That was when things
clarifications,
really
or
started to
responses.
go.
Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight.
What do you
in
do
this
when you
hall
wanna
at the
blow your
National
nose?
Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for two
Really?
candidates
Really?
who
Yeah.
have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the
In
evening.
some cultures,
Vice
it's
President Harris
acceptable
selected
to
the
just,
podium to the right.
close the
So
one
let's now welcome
nostril
the
and
candidates to the
just
stage.
shoot it on
Vice
the
President
sidewalk.
Kamala Harris.
But we
and
don't do
President
that here.
Donald Trump.
Jake is in the booth tonight. Jake said, fucking knew it. Fucking knew they were going to be late. Here we
Oh,
go.
no,
Here they
I'm
are.
really not. All right, not 9:02.
Kamala Harris.
Fair enough.
Let's have a good debate. Thank you.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Welcome to you
introduced
both.
yourself.
It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often
President
asks
Biden.
his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people.
Oh,
We
so
know
she's
that
not
young
gonna answer
families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and
passion
me,
is putting
but there
people
was
in
a woman
prison.
who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small
well,
business
well,
owner.
well, this is
I
what
love our small
Caleb says.
businesses.
She talks about
My
her
plan
childhood
is to give a
more than any
$50,000
politician
tax
in
deduction
history.
to startups,
Everything
small
goes back to her
businesses,
mother, her
knowing they are
childhood,
part of
when
the
she was a
backbone of
child.
America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Okay, they told
First of
her
all, I
not
have
to
no
defend the
sales tax.
Biden
That's an
economy.
incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics.
They're eating
and
our
also
dogs.
Unions.
I don't even
Unions
like
are gonna be
dogs,
affected
but
very
I don't
soon.
think you should eat them.
And you see what's happening.
People who
you
do
see
like
what's
dogs
happening
have a
with
right to
towns
their
throughout the
dogs.
United States. You look at
They
Springfield,
have a
Ohio,
special
are
name
eating
for
Aurora,
chihuahuas. They
in
call them corn
Colorado.
on the cob.
They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country.
do you want
and
that
they're
dachshund? Do you
destroying
want
our
a dachshund
country.
burrito
They're
or a bowl?
dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate.
All
but,
right,
I
so they
would like
told
let
him to
Vice
stay on
President Harris
message and be
respond on the
disciplined,
economy.
which out of the
Well,
gate
I
he's
would love to.
achieving.
Let's talk about what Donald
Told her
Trump
not to
left
defend the
us.
Biden record.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
You know, I got to say, I like her.
I believe
I
very
like her
strongly
shirt. I like that shirt.
that the
It's
American
different.
people want a
like a
president who
pirate shirt.
understands
Yeah,
the
like-
importance
it's like a
of
puffy shirt.
bringing us together, knowing we have so
Different.
much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you
I
to
like
be a
it.
president for all Americans.
President
I'm a
Trump
good
will give you
man.
a
The
minute to respond.
Pirates of the
Number one, I
Caribbean
have nothing
line
to
of
do, as you
Macy's.
know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died. Has there been anything like it? We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic.
We did much better
We
than that.
handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic
Not
plan,
yet,
it's
the
all about
insubordinate
tax
act.
breaks
I'm,
for
I'm
the richest
expecting
people.
that'll get about
I
45
am
seconds of
offering
time tonight.
what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the
Oh,
economy.
well, Goldman Sachs
What
says
the Wharton
it.
School has said is Donald Trump's
Well, I
plan
think this,
would
this should,
actually
that's it.
explode the deficit.
That's the
16
final word.
Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
You insulted him a little bit. You got a little out of order yourself.
I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences. Like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have, and who's going to have higher prices, is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We have taken billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Yeah, laughing that off is not a good look.
And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Smiling and laughing.
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having, on the short end of the stick, in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you
They've
look at
surrendered
what she's
to the
done
communists.
to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump,
He's on his game tonight.
You were able to
He's
carry
on his
Roe v.
game.
Wade
She should have tried to
last
jump
year,
in
and
there.
You said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really
It's
out of it.
degenerate and
But her
sick.
vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years, they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able
That's a clever
to do
way
that.
of
Now, I
phrasing it.
believe
They
in
were
the
trying to get
exceptions
Roe v.
for
Wade
rape,
into the
incest,
states.
and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual
people in Kansas
state
liked
is
Jesus.
voting. It's the
Turns
vote
out
of the
they hate
people
him.
now. It's not tied up in the
people in
federal
Kansas
government.
don't care if they go to
did
hell.
a great service in doing
Who'd
it.
have
It
thought
took
that?
courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies.
He protests
and that's
too
not
much on that
actually
answer. It's
a
a
surprising
mistake.
fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump
Because she's probably
hand-selected
gonna
3 members of the United
castrate him
States
with a
Supreme
Coke bottle
Court
on
with the
this question.
intention
I
that they
would
would undo
imagine.
the protections
Yeah.
of Roe v. Wade.
It's kind
And they did exactly as he
right
intended.
over home plate.
And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot? She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody
She got
else,
a little overzealous
and
at the end. She
every
didn't
legal
have to do
scholar
Project
wanted it to be
2025
brought back
or the
into the
national
states,
ban.
and the
She could have
states
just
are
left it
voting. And it may take a
10
little
seconds
time,
earlier.
but for
Yeah, but
52 years,
she-
this issue has torn our country apart. And they've wanted it back
I
in
mean,
the
we've
states.
seen it in
And I
2
did
elections.
something that
This issue
nobody
is
thought
deadly
was
for them.
possible.
Oh, yeah.
The states are now
She could
voting.
afford to stretch the
What
truth a
she
little bit. I mean,
says
it's politics,
is an
right?
absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter, because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well, I
to your
won't
desk?
have to, because again, two things. Number one, she
Just
said
say
she'll
yes.
go back to Congress. She'll
Just
never
say
get
yes,
the vote.
exactly.
It's
Just say
impossible for her
yes.
to get the
That's not
vote,
good.
especially now with the 50-50,
Not good.
and
The fu-
essentially
the-
50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote.
fundamentalists
She
are
can't
gonna
get the
vote
vote.
for
She
you
won't
anyway.
even come close to it.
Yeah,
So
they
it's
can vote
just
for you
talk.
anyway.
You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it, because she'd never be able to
JD,
get it,
never
just
mind
like
that
she
guy.
couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student
Fuck
loans.
that
They
guy.
didn't
He
even
was
come
a
close to
mistake.
getting
It's a
student loans.
mistake.
They taunted young
My son
people
convinced me to
and
pick
a lot
that
of other
idiot.
people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress.
Getting
Wonderful.
charm
Let's go to
minimum
Congress,
wage
do
workers
it.
in a donut
But
shop.
the fact is that
Yeah.
for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump.
I did not have
Couples
sexual relations with that woman.
And dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that.
If I lose, I'm going to open up a Trump IVF clinic.
I have been a leader on fertilization IVF. And the other thing, you should ask.
You pull the lever, you get it for
Will
free if the free cherries come up.
9th month,
Three cherries
7th month.
lined up.
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question. Would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board
Yeah,
in
she
this
kind of
country.
ripped his balls
Vice
off and
President
shoved them in his
Harris,
eye
you were
sockets
tasked
on
by
that.
I mean,
President
he's
Biden
doing as
with
well
getting
as
to the
he
root
could with
causes
that
of migration from
question.
Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage
What's the
who has
question?
prosecuted
Spaced it
transnational
out.
criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom.
Oh.
And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires.
It's the wrong tone.
And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, They're eating the dogs. The
Oh,
people
he
that
actually
came
went
in,
with that?
They're eating the cats.
He
They're
actually
eating-
said that?
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
He actually said that. Wow.
Rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success,
Losing
will
to
end up
Donald.
being
Easy,
Venezuela
big fella.
on steroids.
She triggered him with that.
I just want to clarify
that
here, you
crowd
bring up
thing.
Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've
this-
seen
Yeah,
people
no,
on television
America
saying
should be
here, this is
the
people on
dominant world
television
power.
saying
We're
my dog was
qualified.
taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good
Yeah.
thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But the
television.
people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says
You're
there's
really
no
gonna
evidence
die
of that.
on that
Vice President
hill?
Harris, I'll let you
The old
respond to the rest
dog
of what you've
eating?
heard.
Talk about extreme.
This is what I mean, man. He's
You
too,
know,
yeah.
this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formally worked with President Bush,
Now
Mitt
would be a good
Romney,
time to tout
and
the
John McCain,
ASPCA endorsement if you
including
have
the
it.
endorsement of former Vice
don't know if you have
President
it,
Dick
but-
Cheney and Congress member
PETA
Liz
and the
Cheney.
ASPCA.
And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of
She's gotta hit
Defense
him on the
has
dog
said
thing.
the nation, the republic, would never survive
I mean, that's
another
that's
Trump
fucked up to do
term.
to go to the dog thing.
And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond
Yeah.
here.
Thank
Listen,
you.
that
Because
guy is a
when I
liar.
hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person.
You know, when he said
I
that,
fired
there was
most
a
of those
tail
people.
hanging out his mouth.
Not so graciously.
And
They
making
did
Bushu
bad things
great
or bad
gain in
jobs.
the
I
suburbs
fired
of
them.
Chicago.
They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose
You get a
whose
chicken shawarma,
were
you're like,
just
this tastes a
killed
little
viciously
gamey.
and
I wonder
violently
why.
killed, and I got to know the parents and the family. They
'Cause
didn't
it's an
fire- they should
Australian
have fired
Labradoodle.
all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen.
He's
So
triggered.
when
He's
somebody
triggered.
does a bad
He's losing
job,
it now. He started
I
off good.
fire
Now he's
him.
triggered.
And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired
Maybe they
him.
had,
So he writes a
um,
book. Another one writes a
Darryl
book. Because
Cooper
with me,
do
they
the
can write
debate
books.
prep
With
with
nobody else
Kamala.
can they?
Figure how
But
can
they
she
have
trigger
done
him?
such
'Cause
a
Darryl
poor
Cooper's
job,
good at triggering
and they
people.
never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in
boy.
history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud.
They
Just
are.
Like their
They
number
are
of 818,000
way more
jobs
than
that they said they
CNN
created
people
turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you
Fake
respond,
news.
Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said
Jose
he
Vega
would
here,
terminate,
everybody.
I'm quoting,
This is an official statement from the Jose Vega for
Constitution
Congress
of the
campaign.
United States, that he would
His statement in
weaponize
response to the
Department
that comment
of
on
Justice
letterhead
against his political
can you send that on an official
Someone who
letterhead
has
so we can do a segment on that on
expressed
Thursday, please?
disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
to stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed.
Took a poll,
so then why
4
have
out of
so
10
many of
American
your
viewers
policy
thought the
positions
moderator
changed?
was Kamala Harris.
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable.
As long as you weren't molested by the
work
Catholic
that
Church,
is
in
about
which
protecting
case my
Social
AG's
Security and
office would not share the files.
Medicare is based on
I like
long-standing
my
work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
In locking people up.
President
lifting
Trump,
people
Well, first
up.
of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please.
Sure said I'm speaking.
Does that sound familiar?
Good improv.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania.
Really
election,
folded a few issues
in
into one there.
Will end on day one. Just to
good
finish
points
one
for
thing,
efficiency
so
on that.
in my opinion.
She wants to do transgender
I got the oil
operations
business
on
going
illegal
like nobody has ever done before. When they took over,
they should make an
they
attack
got rid of
ad
it,
on
started
that.
getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher because you're talking about
trans
3.5
with a
years
Schmendrick
ago.
swinging it
They
in a
got
girl's
it up
bathroom.
to where I was because they had no choice because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a
Imagine
solar
that.
plant? By the way,
Imagine the
I'm a big fan of
warden
solar.
coming over with the
But they
keys. All right,
400,
Miguel,
500 acres
it's time.
of
Hang on,
desert
hang on.
oil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not
issues
good things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days.
Wow.
And I want to talk about the
State-ordered
peaceful transfer of
transgender
power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president.
And then we're setting you up
in a
with an
moment of
apartment.
crisis.
We're going to set
Mr.
you up with a
President, on
Roosevelt
January 6th,
hotel with
you
your
told
new
your supporters
pussy.
to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them.
On tax
the
paid
country and the
for with
world saw what
taxpayer
played out of the
dollars.
Capitol that day. The
They
officers
say
coming under attack.
it's even tighter
Aides
than
in
the
the
real
West Wing
thing.
say you
I
watched it
wouldn't know.
unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly.
Yeah, tell
I
me
asked,
about it.
what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You
you.
might
They're
ask her that
transing the
question.
immigrants. They're taking jobs from our prostitutes because their pussies are tighter, because they're new. They're fresh. Our prostitutes say, I can't get work anymore. I'm competing against these trans immigrants with
I
tight
had
pussies
nothing to do with that, other
that are
than
only
they
a
asked me
week
to make
old.
a speech. I
It's
showed up
impossible
for
to
a
stay
speech. I
competitive.
said, I think it's
You know,
gonna be big.
their jobs
I went to
matter
Nancy
too.
Pelosi
hang
and the
on.
mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back.
He was
Let's
talking about the
chart a
economy.
course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville,
He
that
is
story has
flustered.
been, as you would say,
He's
debunked.
been triggered since
Laura
that,
Ingraham,
since the audience
Sean Hannity,
thing.
Jesse,
Since she said
all
your
of these
crowd
people,
walks
they
out.
covered it. If they go an extra
not, like,
sentence, they will
breathing
see it was
and taking
perfect.
his time.
It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people.
Now, it is
unlike
crazy
J6.
that-
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus.
It's crazy that they
in these
fact-checked
times
him
that
and
we're
not
living
her
in.
on the bloodbath
Mr.
thing.
President, for
Exactly.
3.5 years
Well,
after
yeah, I mean,
you
there's-
lost the
there's a
2020
bias.
election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won,
Clearly.
many times saying you won in a landslide. In
Ever
the past
since, what
couple
was
of
her
weeks
name?
leading
Martha
up to this
Rath.
debate,
Ever
you
since
have
she
said,
pulled that
quote,
shit in
you
that
lost
debate.
by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically. You
But
know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about it. An election is fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to
That's
come
why they're
into our
transing
country.
them, so they become women,
these
so
pieces
that
of
they're
video.
concerned about Roe
I
v.
didn't
Wade.
detect
They're
the
using
sarcasm,
their
lost by a whisker, we didn't
seductive,
quite make
newly
it.
made
And we should just point out here as
vaginas to
clarification, and you know
seduce
this,
people into
you and your
voting
allies,
Democrat.
60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No judge
Republican.
looked at it.
And said
They
there
said
was no
we didn't
witness.
have
a lot of
standing.
times
That's
it
the
still
other
has the
thing.
price tag
They said
hanging
we
off
didn't
it.
have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election
You
doesn't
think
have
that's the
standing?
price tag hanging off
President of
the
United
panties? No,
States
no, it's off
doesn't
the
have
vagina
standing.
itself.
That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated,
because we
and
don't
then he
want to
lists
get
donors,
attacked by
voters,
the
election
blue MAGA
officials,
tomorrow.
he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair
You
election.
don't see him anymore.
And I'm going to tell you
they're just
that
hiding him.
I have traveled the
that's
world
funny,
as Vice
Chad.
President of the United States. And world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think
up.
we're going to do very well.
You don't seem okay with it, man.
Turning
You seem
now
a little.
to Israel, Hamas
You seem a little
war and
rattled.
the hostages who are still being held, Americans among
Oh, here
them.
we go.
Vice
That was
President
funny.
Harris, in December, you said,
hates
quote,
her.
Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians.
So we know what this.
But the
this
one
is a
thing I
scripted
will
answer,
assure
obviously.
you always, I will always
Curious
give
to see what
Israel
Trump
the
says
ability
and
to
if
defend
she
itself,
responds, or
in
if they just
particular
go
as
to
it
the
relates
next,
relates to Iran,
topic.
and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild
Yeah, no,
Gaza,
that's
where
worked
the
out really well.
Palestinians have security,
It's a whole new idea.
self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President
Netanyahu
Trump, how
said,
would you negotiate with
he rejects the
Netanyahu
two-state
and also
solution.
Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. Terror. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide
fucking
and
scumbag douchebag
from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
All right. I mean, so this is one of those proverbial debates where nobody's mind is going to be changed so far. Neither one of them has done anything that would alienate anyone that would be voting for them anyway. I don't think the pet eating hurts him when people would be inclined to vote for him. And, you know, I mean, she's just, you know, I mean, she's delivering her scripted lines. She hasn't been thrown off script. They clearly had a tactic. They made a decision. Don't try to defend Biden. Distance yourself from Biden. Talk about the future. If you're asked about this administration, talk about the future. Talk about what you're going to do. Don't connect yourself to the Biden legacy.
Yeah, that's definitely notable. No real mention of Biden at all from her, which is definitely notable. she's definitely winning on points by quite a bit. He seemed pretty composed for the first 5-6 minutes, and look, it's nothing too unsurprising. He seemed to have gotten triggered by that line that the people are walking out of his rallies. His whole demeanor changed after that line.
Yeah.
And he has
It was,
not
it was
recovered.
very composed.
He was very composed. He was straight up and down. He was breathing normally, speaking at a normal pace. And since then, he's all like this. And every time they cut to him, he's really trying to spit out as much as he can. Yeah, definitely not as composed as he was, pardon me, at the start. And I think that's why. And yeah, I mean, look, she can do a debate. This is what I said. I said it's not beyond her to perform well in a debate setting. She performed very well in the first 2019 primary debate, which made her a top-tier candidate for a few weeks, and she couldn't sustain that. But yeah, no, it's not beyond her to do well in a debate. On points, she's doing pretty well. She took advantage of the reproductive rights question, obviously, and even on the immigration question, it's not so much that the dog eating hurts, but that's an opportunity to put points on the board if you're Trump. I mean, immigration's your big issue, and the country's with you on that. So to jump the shark on that question is a blown opportunity, because
I mean, it's not the only answer he gave on that subject.
No, but I mean, come on, that's the one that people. That's the memorable line from that question. He's not doing well. He's not doing well. Is it a disaster? No, I agree with you. I don't think this is the kind of debate that moves the needle much. But if there is a winner right now, it is definitely Kamala. And not by a lot, not in a way that really changes the race. It's not a game changer by any means, but he has been flustered for about 75% of the time. And it doesn't help him, obviously, that the moderators are fact-checking him and not her, obviously. I mean, those two lines about dictator on day one and there's going to be a bloodbath if I lose. I mean, those are, if Trump took one of her quotes out of context, they would definitely fact-check him on it.
Right.
And so that's not really helping either.
Well, because we've seen what happened if even, a establishment hack in good standing like Maggie Haberman merely suggests that maybe Biden is not on his game. There's a huge attack from Blue MAGA to try to pull her off the air and get her fired. That's exactly why they behave that way, because they don't want that tomorrow. They don't want to be the moderators. They say, why did you let him get away with that?
Right. Of course. And, if the debate ends the way it starts, and apparently we only have about 20 minutes left, they say it's a 90-minute debate, so there shouldn't be much longer. There should be maybe one or two more issues and then final statements. The media is definitely going to gas her up for this because she performed well enough to the point where the media is definitely going to give her big stepping out moment. I would not be surprised if she gets rave reviews for this from CNN and the New York Times.
They gave rave reviews to Joe Biden for his State of the Union just for not shitting himself.
Right, exactly, yeah. So, that's what you can expect in the aftermath of this so far, unless something really dramatically changes. But, yeah, I mean, so far she's doing what she's got to do. 2821 in the YouTube and Twitter chats. Nice to see you all here. Let's get a 1999 sound drop while we bring the show back.
We're going to continue. I want to turn to the war in Ukraine around 2.5 months into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for $250 billion or more. because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best
and
interest
then they
to
ate
get this
him.
war finished and just get it done.
They fed him to the Haitians in Ohio.
Because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded.
So in a sane society, that would be a disqualifying answer.
Territorial boundaries to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence
Israel, because I'm all about territorial integrity.
Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies
He's against
are so
transing
thankful
immigrants, Putin.
that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight, Afghanistan.
So that's a perfect
example. With one of those IKEA ottomans.
Please,
that's a perfect example. Sorry, I'll let this
would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much
Quiet,
happier than he
please.
is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that
Quiet,
other
please.
people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin.
I mean,
And
that's
she
a very
did.
dumbed
And the
down
war started 3
version
days
of what
later.
happened.
And
They
that's
sent
the
her there
kind
to
of
start the
talent
war, is
we
what they
have with
did.
her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion,
But he is
I think
right
he's
that
the
they
worst
sent her there,
president in the
and then the
history of
war
our
broke
country.
down.
She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of
we
this
got
debate.
to talk about the Ukraine part.
I want to move on to
after the debate,
Afghanistan.
'cause I definitely want
Said
to clip
Trump
that
did the
tomorrow.
most amazing thing I've ever seen. He
That's
got these
definitely the most
countries,
interesting part
the
of this so
28
far.
countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents
You just
said
totally
they
throw
would,
Biden under
and
the
Joe
bus.
Biden did.
Me and Dougie
And
were
as a result,
Netflix and chilling at
America's
the time. I had
taxpayers are
nothing to
not
do with
paying
it.
the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement.
Why'd you send me a picture of my nephew's falafel card in Times Square?
We were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country.
I thought
Mr.
this was
President,
90
you
minutes.
recently
So,
said
yeah,
of
what do you
Vice
mean?
President Harris, quote,
thought this was
I
almost
didn't know
over.
she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known
They
as
want to
black.
go out on a high
I want to
note.
ask a bigger picture question here tonight.
I'm
Why do you
surprised they
believe
give
it's
Ukraine that much
appropriate
time,
to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out.
Doesn't take long.
And I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
Oh, come on.
I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
I mean, that's a very cheap
You know, I do believe that the
debate
vast
question,
majority of
because
us know that we have so much more
the
in common than
question
what
itself
separates us, and
is
we
just
don't want
so
this kind of
oriented
approach that
to
is
be
just
a lob ball
constantly
for her.
trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible,
They had
one who
that
brings
ready.
a sense of optimism about what
Man,
we
they
can
are
do
really
instead of
just-
always disparaging.
They didn't even give
the
him like
American
half
people.
a sentence of like,
I
I was
believe
honored
in
to
what we
serve
can
under.
do to
They gave him nothing.
strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about
Are you getting
our
the lag
plans
on that?
and let's compare the plans.
Just
I
clear
have
it
a
up.
plan
No.
to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay. Thank
That's
you, Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
No,
because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump.
president has
No,
said
I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I just need
going to move
respond
on, Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this is
multiple
now
times.
your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have
All right,
long
so this is a
vowed to
2-hour
repeal
debate.
and
It can't be
replace the
90
Affordable
minutes.
Care Act,
said it was
also
gonna be 90
known as
minutes.
Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better.
Yeah, it's gonna be-
Last
yeah.
month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have
Jake,
a
if you
plan?
gotta cut out,
and
you can
can you
cut
tell
out
us what it
whenever,
is?
obviously.
Obamacare was
Just let me know.
lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that
John
night.
McCain, who resisted making MLK Day a national holiday until the 80s.
No, you don't.
That late, great John McCain.
No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we, over the last 4 years, have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice President Harris,
in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue.
Well, to guarantee it as a right, you would need universal health care,
Number
wouldn't you?
one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates in a story.
So they just ran
ABC
a
News
little over.
presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
All right. So, look, I mean, this is what a lot of people missed about Trump the first time around. That might not play to the normies, but it does play to people who are going to vote for Donald Trump. That anger about NATO, about feeling ripped off, about inflation. He's speaking to that in a way that Harris is not ideologically inclined to and is not temperamentally capable of. So in the end, I mean, this is something a lot of people missed the first time with Trump. When she's smiling there and kind of laughing as he's talking about inflation, that's not a good look. That's not something that plays for the normies. The normies aren't voting for Donald Trump. Like I don't think he's hurt himself tonight. Has he expanded his base? No. I mean, I think people who like him have probably been fired up by this.
I think in a very close election that's going to be decided in the suburbs amongst moderates, I think Kamala has helped herself a decent amount. The betting markets, as someone just super chatted, had Trump drop 4%, which is very, very low. I mean, that's very, very little because it's 4% odds, right?
Well, an element of that is also that Kamala didn't collapse on stage.
Well, Kamala, that's the other thing. Kamala has not offered up one of her signature Kamala word salads. She's been sharp. She looks competent. She looks like she could do the job. And so I think she has helped herself. Like I said, this is not a game changer debate. There's no way to say that it is, but I do think she will get. If anybody's gonna come out, if anybody's gonna get a little bounce out of this, it's gonna be her, because she has been sharp. He has looked flustered at times, not terrible. He doesn't have any. There's no moments that are gonna really hurt him. But look, the big test with her is, can she do it? Is she gonna go on one of those things? Inflation is about the cost of goods. Right. The cost of goods.
No,
is
they
up.
They prepped her and prepped her and prepped her.
And she's not letting the clock run either. She's filling the time. It's not like she's giving 30-second answers, and there's this weird pause and then they go to Trump. She's filling the 2 minutes. So, she's doing okay in that respect, and I do think, and we'll talk a little bit more about this after the whole thing's done, but they're definitely catering her points towards that tiny slice of moderate normies.
Right.
They have David Plouffe on the team. He's a pro. You know, these are not amateurs on her staff. And you know, I think they are targeting the kind of voter that typically decides these elections. Trump just he's not targeting anybody. I don't really see much execution on his end. He's holding his own. Like, he's doing okay. He's doing fine for Trump. But you know, he needed to keep that composure he had in the first 10 minutes all the way through, and just hammer on the economy relentlessly, hammer on you know, the border relentlessly, turning turning that environment question into a Hunter Biden question. You know, it plays a little sloppy. Now, I would say in his defense, they're not going to tee up a Hunter Biden question for him the way they teed up the race question for Kamala, right? He's not going to get an opportunity to like go on a monologue in a way that really makes sense according to the question that was posed to him. That is moderator bias, and there has been significant moderator bias. So I would say that. But I think it's ultimately not a game changer debate. But if there's a slight edge, I would give it to her for sure.
Yeah, you always have to remember with Trump, his rhetoric speaks to a lot of people. Look, the pet thing was fucking funny. The trans thing was hilarious.
That was
and
that was one
the waking up Joe Biden at 4:00 in the afternoon.
Yes.
Look, that is a big part of Trump's appeal, because even now he's the only politician in the game who would say shit like that. Nobody else would say something like that at this level. So, you know, and he delivers lines like that well. He's funny. Like I say, he doesn't lose any ground. What you're saying, that maybe she convinced people who aren't already convinced. I mean, maybe. I feel like anybody who liked her performance
So
tonight
I think
was already
you've
voting
heard
for her.
tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay?
Do you have the money to fight it?
That's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like We're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't.
They had thought of that earlier.
sacrifice
They wouldn't have
our
had to do the
country
Holocaust
for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, everybody. All right. It's going to be interesting to see what the pundits
I think we know what they're going to say.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris dominates first debate with Donald Trump. Trump is flustered, makes false pet eating accusation.
Yes. I suspect she will get some good press out of this, and we will cover all of that on Thursday day show, since we are on at noon on Thursday, not at 9 a.m., but noon, remember. Hey, everybody.
What was it? Immigrant trans prisoners.
They want to give transgender surgeries to illegal immigrants in jail. That's the fucking greatest. That was
the best thing ever said at a presidential
That
debate.
was the funniest shit I've ever heard at a debate.
I think they need to put that in the 365-day quote calendar.
Oh, yeah. Like, not even close. I mean, that was just by far the funniest shit I've ever heard at a debate. She wants to do transgender surgeries on illegal immigrants who are in prison.
Which actually, look, the funny thing is, one of the critiques from the left of Kamala is that her AG office blocked that surgery for transgender prisoners.
That is
they actually fought against being able to get transgender treatment in prison.
That was fucking funny. That was really funny. Hey, folks, hit that follow button over on Rumble. Hit that subscribe button while you're here on YouTube. If you appreciate what we do, if you want to help support the project, become a patron. Go to patreon.com/DoDissidents. You can also go to DoDissidents.substack.com, or you can join our locals at DoDissidents.locals.com. That helps support us for the extra shows. So thank you guys very much. Mac Truck says the United States of Dystopia. Thank you, Mac Truck. Okay, so we'll give our sort of general breakdown of the debate here for the clip. We'll cut in right now. I thought generally somewhat of a tie in terms of movement of the polls. I think if you're the Kamala campaign, you come out of this happier than if you're the Trump campaign because there was more at stake for her. You know, she's never done a presidential debate. She's never been one-on-one against Trump. She's not typically very good on the mic. You could have had a few of those word salads that just made for embarrassing video. I mean, she wasn't going to melt down the way Biden was because he just can't do it anymore.
Right.
But there were pitfalls that she avoided. She came off as a pro. She came off as someone who knew what she was talking about. She didn't give short answers and let the time remain on the clock. She filled the time.
Right.
She filled the space. It's very significant. What's significant about the passage of time is that Kamala Harris was able to fill the 2 minutes of time with words tonight and not make a complete fool of herself. So that was a win. I thought Trump started out pretty good, pretty composed. It was like, oh, he's on. I noticed a big shift in his temperament when she gave him that line about how the audience is walking out on his
definitely
rallies.
triggered him.
That triggered him. And that triggered him, and it changed his demeanor the entire rest of the time. He never really recovered. It wasn't horrible. I'm not going to say he melted down, but it definitely he was standing up straight, was breathing slowly, he had a rhythm about himself. He seemed sure of what he was going to say. And after that, his body language changed. You could see it. He's leaning forward.
He went Cartman.
Yeah, he kind of did a little bit of a Cartman thing. Started leaning forward, started talking very fast, like he had to get a bunch of stuff in. There were certain questions that he just clearly was not prepared for, like the healthcare question. I mean, that kind of stuff, that's like talking about golf. I mean, that's not going to move the polls at all.
How's he going to answer it? Because they don't have a fucking plan.
They don't have a plan.
What he's saying about Obamacare is true. It is true. People have these insane deductibles for these health plans where at the end of the day, you only have the insurance so that you don't lose your house. That is not a good plan. He's right about that, but they're not going to offer anything better. What, Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to offer something better?
They might. They
probably make it worse. And then he starts talking about how Kamala, you're going to wait 6 months for a surgery. It goes back to the socialist healthcare boogeyman.
Which is obviously totally untrue.
Yeah, what was he going to answer?
Yeah. So I mean, that's an issue where he was unprepared. Now we could talk about this as politics nerds. That question moves the needle, not at all. That question makes no difference. There's only a few opportunities you have over the course of one of these debates to really make a difference in terms of moving a sizable number of voters. And what I do think was significant about the the Haitians in Ohio eating dogs, that whole, insane statement. What was significant about that is immigration.
Somebody in the chat said Gray Zone did something on it where they confirmed that it's real. Now, I don't know. That's just somebody said that in the chat.
All right. Well, we will take a look at that. But from what I've heard, that is not in fact real. But what I think, regardless, made that a costly answer is because immigration is one of his opportunities to put points on the board and have a moment. And you kind of give that up when you jump the shark like that and say something that's just so funny. Even if it is real, and I don't know, I mean, someone's saying in the chat, but even if it is real, there's certainly a more intelligent way to frame that issue that appeals to far more people than a story about Haitian immigrants in Ohio eating dogs. And so I think
I think it appeals to more people. This is always the mistake people make with Trump. Those moments appeal to more people than a lot of people realize. That's not a bug. In a lot of ways, it's a feature. Yeah, it turns a lot of people off, but it makes a lot of people who wouldn't vote for somebody who didn't say shit like that show up to vote. That is really, in a nutshell, how he won in 2016.
Yeah, but 2016
said all this shit that they thought was a campaign ending, but it brought all these people out of these areas. That was why I had a 50-50 prediction on 2016. I said, look, if he's right, if their theory of the case is right, that there were all these infrequent voters who are going to come out of the rural areas and show up to vote for the first time, or very rarely, because of Trump's everything they hate about him is going to make these people vote, he'll win. He'll win by a very narrow margin, but he'll win. And that's what happened. So I think whenever he says stuff like that, I mean, that's what it comes down to. How many of those people that really turns on show up to vote?
Yeah, but why is Trump 0-4 in national elections since 2016? He has not won a national race since then. He's lost. He lost in 2018. He lost in 2020.
I mean, 2020, we agree it was, COVID.
Well, sure, but he lost in 2022. I mean, the Republicans won the House, but his candidates...
Roe v. Wade, man. Roe v. Wade, and that could still
It wasn't
kill
just
him.
Roe v. Wade. His candidates shit the bed.
His candidates
I mean,
sucked,
Herschel Walker, Dr. Oz. I mean,
that's
just
not
ridiculous
him. That's not him. That's not him.
But the problem
Herschel Walker's not running.
The
Donald
problem
Trump's
with your
running.
assessment is that, and the reason why I think MAGA has fared poorly in elections since 2016 is that in 2016, these people you're talking about were not in the models. They were not in the polling. They were not in the data. They were unaccounted for. Now they're in the models. They're in the numbers. You're starting to see them reflected more in polling. And so I think it's not that they don't exist, it's that they represent less of an X factor.
I mean, they
represent less of an X factor.
I don't know, man. Infamously, they like to troll pollsters. So I can tell, oh, yeah,
that's not a significant
vote for Kamala.
That's not a significant cohort. I really don't think so.
I don't think we know. I don't think we know. Yeah, maybe they're accounting for it more, but in the end, people who are basically off the grid, not political, not involved. How do you adjust the model for that? Like what do? You can't be like, well, we estimate this many. They don't do polls that way.
Yeah, but if you're talking about off the grid, I mean, now you're talking about a very small number of people. I
don't mean off the grid literally.
No, I know,
like
but
they're not very plugged in.
Yeah, I mean, what I think is that this electorate is going to be a bit more conventional than 2016. 2020 was extremely unpredictable because of the circumstances, but it turned out to be a more conventional sort of makeup there, in which, like I said, the Trump voters were more or less accounted for. He outperformed the polls a bit. He made it closer than a lot of people thought. And in a close race where he's, liable to outperform the polls, he's the favorite. I mean, I don't think you could say he's not the favorite. I mean, Nate Silver just did a thing where now he's saying he's a 63% favorite. So I think he's definitely the favorite. And I don't think this changes that, but it does get Kamala over a major hurdle.
Sure.
She'll raise money off of this. Whether there will be future debates, I'm not sure. But this keeps her in the game. It's a very, very close race.
Yeah,
I don't think this changed all that much. But the other thing about this, I will say, is that Kamala's messaging is targeted to a very narrow slice of undecided moderates. And I think the real question here is, does the electorate look more like 2016 or more like 2022? That's the question. Right. Because in 2022, the normies came out in droves, and because of Roe v. Wade, the moderate normies flooded the ballot box for Dems, and they even fared a little better than they usually do in rural areas because of that issue.
Right.
If that
happens, could definitely happen again.
If that's the electorate, then this strategy will have paid off. And by this strategy, I mean this overall campaign strategy as reflected in this debate on her part. Because answer after answer after answer, appealing to the goodness and the decency and the niceness of the country, that hits their sweet spot. That hits the sweet spot of a very, very, very tiny percentage of the population who could very well swing it in places like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Arizona. That's the gamble that they're making. Trump is more or less doubling down on what he does. It was a pretty predictable debate in that way. Like I thought, she really just leaned into, I'm the norms and guardrails person. If we're going to continue to delude ourselves about how great a country we are and pretend that a return to normalcy is really what we need, then that's what she's going with. What makes that tough to sell is that you're the incumbent, which brings us to another point. Joe Biden, completely. I mean, she gave him nothing. She didn't even give him half a sentence of, it's been an honor to serve under Joe Biden. Nothing. Zero. No positive. Nothing at all positive to say about Joe Biden.
Her whole performance was so scripted and so planned.
Yeah.
There's nothing there that was spontaneous. Like they decided Joe Biden is a deeply unpopular incumbent. And at this point, he doesn't even know he's president. We have to not talk about him. We have to pretend he doesn't exist. We have to throw all the focus onto you, this unknown quantity that people can project their little hopes and dreams onto and their joy vibes and all that shit. We can't connect you to Joe Biden. But, and this is again where, and I think we agree on this, advantage Trump. And this is why I think some of the things he says, like raging about inflation, it plays, man, because this is what people identify with that. I think in some ways she has the Hillary problem, where the Democrats, ironically, and this is part of why their convention looked like a Bush convention, from the 2000s because they've become that party. So if you're that party, America, the response is America's great. Stop down talking America. And Trump, the secret sauce for him, has always been speaking for the fact that, you know, we're in a Gilded Age level of wealth inequality. People are very frustrated. They're very angry, and he's speaking to it in a way that the Democrats, because they have become the party of the elite classes, they can't speak to it. That would be anathema to their entire brand at this point. You want to talk about not appealing to those normie moderates? They start talking class war. They start talking about. Do you hear a word about Wall Street, the bankers, anything like that? You know, they can't go there. They can't go there. So what's your response? America's already great. I mean, that was essentially what you said. But we're going to do this. We're going to throw some crumbs to the peasants. We're going to have these little policy adjustments. But you know, things aren't that bad. But they are bad. They are bad. When he starts talking about how certain things have gone up 60, 70, 80%, you know, that's fucking true. That's true. Like there are things that have gone up 60, 70, 80%. When I go to the supermarket, because I've been getting meal kits for years and years and years and years. So I don't usually go and buy dinner stuff from the store. But when I do, I am shocked at how much a steak costs now, at how much chicken cutlets cost now. Because I don't usually buy those things, but I used to. And when I used to buy them, they were literally, I mean, you're not talking that long ago. You're talking 5-6 years ago. They were literally like half what they cost now, if not even less than that. So that's speaking to more people than these elite classes represent, but they vote in higher proportions. And that was always the math with Trump. He would get some of these people who don't vote to vote, and that flipped it in just the right places. So that's the whole question. Can he do that again to a degree that outweighs the Roe v. Wade effect, which, as we've seen in 2 elections, is very considerable?
Yes. And, you know, I thought that they should have given that more time. I thought there was really very little on inflation. Very little. And I think, you know, part of that is that is an issue that disproportionately affects working class people. You know, the PMCs, who generally these are catered for. It's very coded in that way. You know, inflation is something they'd rather not deal with, but it's not a make or break thing. There's very little mention of that. I mean, at the top, and that was it. The one question at the very top, and that was really it. So, you know, I thought, you know, it would have been to Trump's advantage to get more in on that, because it kind of disappeared from the debate very early on. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, on that question, he was certainly good. And obviously that was before she kind of threw him a little bit off with the crowd size thing and the people leaving during the rallies. So yeah, that's the general take. I think the Ukraine question was something that really struck me. To me, that was the most interesting for like people like us. That was the most interesting part of it, because her answer on that was just absolutely monstrous and psychotic and just like apocalyptic and so incredibly bleak. But unfortunately, and this is why I say things like, here, I'll throw this up on the screen here. I used your "fuck this country" line in a friend family text that nobody responded to. This is why I feel that way, because unfortunately,
oh, really? That wasn't the way to win friends and influence people?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the way she framed Ukraine does appeal to that tiny slice of moderate voters who could tip elections. Now, don't get me wrong. In this case, I don't think it will. Foreign policy is nowhere near people's list of priorities this year, which is horrible, obviously, as it pertains to both Ukraine and Israel-Gaza, obviously. But the reality is I don't think that's going to swing that many votes. But you could just see the way she phrases things. You're a friend to dictators. We don't back down from a fight. Yeah, if you win, the war will end because you'll surrender. The fact that that is not a disqualifyingly psychotic thing to say. You are going to bring peace, and that's bad. I'll keep this unwinnable war going till the bitter end, till the last Ukrainian man is run through this meat grinder. That is just an absolutely monstrous answer, but it does not play that way to people who decide elections. And that's one of the reasons why the country is as fucked as it is, because there is just not an understanding of what these issues actually mean. There's not an understanding amongst the kinds of normie, nice moderates who swing elections that NATO instigated this war and that this is setting the world on the road to ruin, and that the only way to change that is a complete revolution of consciousness, frankly. A complete divorcing from this just like broad assumption that the United States is not the aggressor party, when, of course, the United States and NATO are the aggressor party as it pertains to Russia, Ukraine. And what Donald Trump said, he tries coming back. You know, she's such a weak negotiator. They sent her there to negotiate, and a few days later, the war started. I don't know what exactly, if he got the timeline right. It could be, though. They didn't send her there to negotiate. They sent her there to instigate the war. They sent her there to instigate.
Exactly.
They sent her there to egg Zelensky on. That's why they sent her there. Now, he can't say that because it's off brand for him, because he has to be the negotiator and she's the weakling, right? So the way he phrased that was not factual.
Yeah, they got one look at her and they invaded you.
Right, exactly. That's the way he wants to say, she tried to stop it, but she's too weak. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. That's the way he phrased it, because it's more on brand for his campaign. Right. And frankly, you know, he is an American chauvinist too, as much as he is a cog in the war machine to a small extent, I guess. He's an inconvenience to them. He, at the end of the day, he toes the party line. He fits very well within the overall narrative that we are generally good and all these other countries are generally
bad. Yeah.
But, you know, even his response was too blue-pilled to really be honest. And that's what's really terrifying, where you have a debate about a very seriously potentially like nuclear exchange, like apocalyptic conflict, just so detached from reality and so blind to the consequences of how detached from reality that conversation was. That back and forth was really, you know, exhibit A for why we are as fucked as we are.
Yeah, it was detached from reality on her side, not really from his. He's the one saying they have nuclear weapons, something they never talk about.
Yeah. I'm just saying
on the other
framing,
side. Is he addressed how dangerous this is, which is something they never do. They want to go out there. This is what I mean. They're like the Bush Republican Party. They go out there and they talk about America and our freedoms and defending democracy. And here's Trump. This could be a war like you've never seen. They have nuclear weapons. They don't want to talk about it. He's right. He's right. And it's what's really insane is that it takes Donald Trump to tell you that you know, you want to talk about an insane narrative that they just are massaging the public with this flag waving bullshit. And I laughed when she started talking about defending democracy. We're supporting a fascist apartheid ethno-state in the process of committing a genocide on social media. And you're talking about defending democracy. And the fact that he's talking about the death toll over there, which is something else they never really talk about except when it's to their advantage. So, yeah, no, I mean, he definitely had the better answer on that. He has the better answers on matters of war and peace generally, arguing you were going to bring the Taliban to Camp David. Why not? Who do you negotiate peace with? Your friends?
Your friends, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Who do you bring to a place where you're supposed to negotiate peace?
Right.
Like what? Oh, you were gonna bring them to Camp David. This is what I'm saying. It's this very like traditional, jingoistic, Reagan-esque kind of language. Oh, our sacred places, our sacred institutions. God bless America.
Oh yeah.
And Trump. Is why I say, you know, a lot of his answers were good for people who are inclined to like what he has to say. The suburban normies, they're lost to Trump. They're never voting for Trump either way. Kamala helped herself by not having a meltdown, by not doing a word salad. Trump was Trump, man. I mean, you like that. You like that he's offering some words of opposition to the WEF, Davos Global Transnational Elite Consensus. If that's the language you speak, he spoke it. And I thought he spoke it articulately and clearly. We know Trump can just go off script and start talking about sharks and toilet plungers and whatever. He didn't do that. He was clear. He was concise. He really didn't ramble. Did he convince anyone? Probably not, but neither did she.
His presentation wasn't as good as hers. She definitely outperformed him. Like I said,
I think it depends on what you like. Depends on what you
people
like.
who like Trump. I mean, yeah, if you like, I mean, it depends on who.
But same
you're
thing with
appealed
her.
to.
Like, yeah, like if you like that whole, we're courting World War III, but hey, fuck, we're America and democracy. If you like that, then you'd like that. If you are keyed into not liking that, then those answers made you sick, man.
Yeah, but
again, I don't think it's a good look to be like mockingly looking at the guy while he's talking about inflation. I think those are things that there are a lot of voters who pick up on moments like that, and the media is not going to talk about it. They're not going to frame that. They're not going to have a headline. Kamala smiles as Trump talks about inflation. They're not going to, because they have that bias, but a lot of people do see that. That's how he became president the first time.
Yeah. I think the normies are. I think is a cohort of normie moderate suburbanites who are available to Trump this time because of inflation, because of just the overall state of the country. That's what put a lot of those states back in play. And I think she made successful appeals to them where he did not. Now, if he can circumvent that, he can win. If the electorate looks like a more traditional one, then I think she helped herself perhaps more than we think. It's very difficult to predict. I mean, you're talking about guesswork because you're talking about such a tiny cohort of people. Now, the only reason that matters at all, the only reason it's worth contemplating, predicting, is because the race is close enough to the point where that small a number of people could make the difference. But I thought Kamala's game plan was to come in, make as strong a pitch as possible to that very tiny cohort of moderates. I thought she executed that well. Trump, I thought he started out good. I think he was thrown off his game a little bit, and I don't think his execution was as sharp as hers throughout most of it. What difference it will make? Really unknowable at this point, I think. I think it's unknowable at this point because you're talking about a very small. You're talking about such a small shift that could make a big difference, and you're talking about such a small number of people, who may or may not have been compelled to either change their mind or decide to vote or not to vote. It's really tough to say. Really tough to say.
You're right that it depends a lot, even more than normal, on what the electorate looks like.
Yes.
Who actually shows up to vote. That's decisive. But hey, in terms of Trump's presidential debate performances, he was better here than he was with Hillary. His performances with Hillary were not good. That was where he was doing the weird walking behind her, and his performances in those debates were much weaker than this was, actually.
Yeah, no, I mean overall he's definitely improved since then. And I don't think he blew it. But I just thought, she had a bar to clear this time, and he didn't. So that gives her a big optical advantage too. She had a bar to clear, and now the narrative, I mean, I can guarantee you the narrative is going to be she passed with flying colors. She's ready for prime time.
Again, anything less than dropping a deuce on stage, you would have gotten that coverage.
Yep. All right. We will read some Rumble rants and super chats, and we will close the lights. Mac Truck, the United States of Dystopia. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Nothing has ruined my faith in the American people's intelligence and the idea that people find Trump's speech pattern and all coherent or understandable really grim that anyone relates to it. Hey, he's got that, that everyman quality, Maybe it's more a New York thing. That's what's kind of interesting, is that it's a very New York thing that made its way into middle America. Miserable Lib, thanks for the $1. Kudos to the engineers. I think they did a pretty good job of programming the Kamala bot to give corporate media enough justification to give her unearned praise. That's an interesting way of putting it, but I think you're right.
That's a very good way to put it. You should have been on this panel.
Yeah, there you go. That cat shit is blatant fake news and only appeals to racists who think brown people are uncivilized. Yeah, all I heard was that J.D. Vance picked it up and that the locals said it's not happening, which is why I was very surprised that Trump went there, because it was something that, to my knowledge, has been debunked. So, I mean, I haven't followed that story that closely, but I was surprised that he went there.
I feel like me and China Shill now, we are very much like Churchill and Stalin. We used to be enemies, but we got together to fight the Nazis.
Yeah, there you go. That's the way it works. That's how you got to do it.
We made an alliance.
Yeah. My wife hates me. Many of my friends might hate me, but I can't hold my tongue during this shit anymore. You're talking about the fuck the country text. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Well, good on you, fighting the good fight. Gray Raven, thanks for the $1. If it counts for anything, I support Trump because Kamala's a nothing burger, but he got trounced in that debate and looked terrible. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say that, but I definitely think she got the better of him. Nocturnal Human, Trump didn't have any factual arguments against Kamala, which there are plenty. He just lied about her not supporting fracking and being a Marxist. I mean, those are all, that's all ridiculous shit as well. And once again, it really depends on what the electorate looks like, because that shit just, that goes in one ear out the other with a lot of people who are tuned in enough to be really weighing their options. That's just a big body attempts at what? Populism. I mean, it's just that to me, there's really no efficacy in doing that at all. And the one thing we didn't really talk about much in the general debate recap, she pretty much skewered him on the abortion question.
Oh, she did.
She pretty much took him apart.
How could she not?
Yeah.
How could she not? They have no good answer on that.
Yeah. And that's big. I mean, that is an issue that has legs. There's no question. It's not like one of these issues where you're like, yeah, I mean,
pets have legs too.
That's true. Pets have legs too. Yes, 4 legs. We know that dog issue has legs. Says 4 legs. Should say that at the CNN post debate at the round table. Start doing shtick. Yeah.
And that's why we're never getting that pass.
Yeah. No, but she took him apart there. And that's an issue that, with the normies is big. Gray Raven, he was horribly unprepared. She set up so many slam dunks he could have taken to the house, and he missed every one. Thanks, Gray Raven. Appreciate that. Let's go here. I am the Owl. Thanks for the $2. The number of dead Palestinians, Ukrainians, and Russians, those with a conscience, makes those with a conscience sick. I get so angry with these evil people. The West has forfeited its right to exist in its current form. Thank you, Owl. Appreciate that. I am the Owl. Let's see here. Create banner. There we go. Just got to copy and paste this. Jake has left the building. Jake is calling it a night to work night for Jake. Round of applause for Jake in the chat. China Shill, thanks for the $1. Like Stalin and FDR, they liked each other. There you go. Beautiful.
There you go.
You guys should pose for a photo of Stalin and FDR. Ken Tex again, thanks for the $20. Appreciate that. I cannot listen to a single thing Kamala says and not want to vomit, knowing how many people are being killed by our proxies, especially in Gaza. I just want to vomit. Thank you, Ken Tex again. I appreciate that donation. Let's go to some YouTube super chats here. Arcana Soul, she's a sentient sea and spell with catchphrases. Thank you. Salamander Fry, thanks for the $10. Kenman, don't forget Muslim and Arab voters. Well, this is what I mean by
forget about Michigan, in my opinion. What is it? 40% say they're voting of Muslims say they're voting for Jill Stein.
Yeah, Jill Stein. So that is another example of what I'm talking about, though, Kenman, is there's no pitch being made to those voters. Like, they are just not in the conversation, it seems, when you watch these debates, right? It's all to suburban people with really no real problems. So it's difficult to say. Like, how do you factor that into what we just saw? You really don't know, especially when the race is as close as it is. As I expected, 3 versus 1 moderators fact-checked Trump. That's the fact-checking was all very one-sided, extremely one-sided. They could have fact-checked Kamala on the January 6th cop thing. They could have fact-checked her on the 2 statements there, the dictator on day 1 and the bloodbath line. They did neither. There were opportunities for them to fact check her the way they fact checked him, and they did not. And that, I think, made a difference. And just the selection of questions. Like, you would think you might get a question about Hunter Biden, even though Joe Biden's not running. It's her administration. It reflects on the conduct of the Democratic Party, which is the incumbent party. I mean,
they would never ask that.
They would never ask that. They would never ask that. You're an attorney general. Is there a case there? Should he pardon his son? Now, you could say that's a little bit out of bounds. Well, if that's a little bit out of bounds, then so is the race question, really, because that was just a lob ball for Kamala. That was just teeing it up, right? Like, if you're going to ask a question, it has to be a question where both sides have the opportunity to score points, right? There's no opportunity for Trump to score points on that race question.
She's never going to agree to a Fox News debate because they'll ask questions.
They'll ask like that, right? Exactly. Yes. Peter Monahan says marked safe from the Trump-Harris debate. Thanks, Peter Monahan. Appreciate that. Q-Star Sonic, thanks for the $9.99. Appreciate it. Trump fails to hit Kamala with the Biden administration's OSHA vax mandate when she claims the government should have no control over women's bodies. Pathetic. He will not touch that issue.
He's not touching that.
That is
he developed the vax.
Well, this is another thing. This is why I keep saying it looks like a more normie electorate, because that's the kind of thing that just doesn't play to them, and he just doesn't go there. He doesn't go there as much as his base wants him to. He never does, ever.
Right.
Sparky,
because he developed the vaccine, like he can't really go there without that coming up.
Right, but
it was his Operation Warp Speed. That's where we got it from.
Right. Sparky, thanks for the $5. People had low expectations for Kamala, and Trump left a lot on the table. So even if it's a tie, it leads towards a debate win for Kamala. I agree, and I think it was a little more than a tie.
You could argue that.
Yep. By Salam Cola, if your near Muslim communities 10% goes to Palestine, we need to start promoting more alternatives to pro-Israel companies. Absolutely.
I do not drink cola, but I would buy it if I did.
If you did. If pressed to predict all toss-ups with the winner. Okay, so you're saying all toss-ups? Cool Blue? Okay. All right, cool. We might have to have Cool Blue join us for election night. At least have some chat line to the show.
Like a whiteboard.
Yeah, like a decision desk kind of thing. We might have to give you, at least if you don't want to be on camera, we'll give you StreamYard access so you can be putting stuff in the private chat. Giving us some data,
Yep.
The due dissidence decision desk, we'll call him. Trump didn't mention Kamala got 0 votes and that she kept people in prison to use as slaves. Well, he didn't mention the second part. He did mention that first one. He did mention that they basically
he got into
like
that.
A dog.
And I thought that was one of his best moments, actually.
It was. Absolutely. Yes, that definitely played. Especially that they threw him out like a dog.
Like a dog. So, did you get in touch with him about getting the original sound files? Because we got a bunch of quotes we could drop in from this debate.
Oh yeah.
Like we could totally, we will totally drop in the trans prisoner quote into the opening theme.
Yeah, that would be.
Did you reach out to him?
No, I forgot. I will. We'll get it done this. We'll get it done this week. All right. Here we go. We got. Oops, what happened here? Oops, come on. Here we go. Let's see. Luis de la Cruz, give me a Norm Finkelstein take on the debate for old time's sake. It was a disgrace, an absolute disgrace, all around.
We used to have candidates with command of the English language.
That's right. Not since Ronald Reagan has such an imbecile taken the podium.
I have heard more intelligent exchanges at the Coney Island hot dog eating contest.
Yeah. I am the owl. Sorry for the typos on previous message. That's all right. I get so flared up when I think of all the dead Arabs and Slavs who are dehumanized and sacrificed by the collective West. Just makes me want to scream. You're not alone. I am the owl. Not at all. Thank you for the donation in the chat. And yeah, don't worry about the typos. Indy B, thanks for the $5. Biden turned me off to the Democratic Party in March 2022 with his creating conflict with Russia, re their border security interests. Kamala did nothing to bring me back. Leaves me voting for Stein. Thank you for that, Indy B. Appreciate that very much. Okay, let's see here. Odessa will be Russia again. Thanks for the $5. The full-on embrace of Dick Cheney and John McCain shows that any progressive heartbeat within the Democratic Party is completely dead. Yep, indeed. Well, that's another thing. She goes back to, like, they recycled some of the real hits there with the John McCain and the I like him because he wasn't captured. I like people who aren't captured. I mean, that's almost 10 fucking years ago already. It's 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Killiary Gregors, thanks you for the $5. Both Trump and Kamala have sharp and quick and unfortunately speak with forked tongue. Thank you for the donation, pretty much. Thank you for that very much. Cool Blue, thanks for the $4.99. 5 of the 7 swing states are up for U.S. Senate: Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. They may end up same party outcomes: U.S. President and U.S. Senate. I mean, in that, yeah, that's interesting. I have a feeling you're going to see some split outcomes, but maybe not. Maybe not. I mean, according to the polls, when it was Biden at the top of the ticket, you had Trump doing very well in Arizona, but you still had Ruben Gallego, the Democrat, doing very well because of the Roe v. Wade thing. Like, the Roe v. Wade thing is going to make, I think, a big difference in the Senate. I don't buy that the Republicans are going to take the Senate. Theory. Yeah, I don't buy that they're going to take the Senate. I know that's conventional wisdom, but I think if there's any vote where people are going to, vote on that issue, if there's any decision that people are going to make on that issue, it's going to be in the Senate.
Yep.
Now, could that have like reverse coattails, right? Because you usually say, well, the president has coattails down ballot. Could Kamala have coattails up ballot? Possible. That really depends on who shows up. It really depends on who shows up.
My theory, I mean, at least when Biden was in the race, was that Trump would win, but Democrats would have the Senate and the Congress because of Roe v. Wade.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they'll win the House. I think Republicans will keep the House, but I do think Democrats will keep the Senate.
I mean, I don't know enough about the individual House races. I don't see the electorate giving the GOP unified power.
Right.
Because of Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Didn't fact check Kamala on the October bonus. So do you say 6 because they won't let,
they
is
would
that a
do
YouTube
that
thing?
in a million years.
Oh, of course, no. But are you talking about? Did you put October 6th because you're worried about YouTube censoring your chat? Is that what that is? Is that your new workaround, Sparky? Thank you. Mark safe from the pet eaters. Thank you, Mr. Fancy Pants. Appreciate that. Okay, let's see what we got here. Any more over on Rumble? Nope, we got, looks like, one more over here on YouTube for $50. Thank you, Eric. Let's get a cowbell out for Eric Maines. Thank you very much for that generous donation. Way to go. Just remember, when you get rich and famous, not to sell out. Use Crystal and Kyle as your anti-guides. Well, thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
It's not in our nature, man. It's not in our nature.
No.
As I think we have demonstrated this week.
Well, yeah, that too.
we're just too fucking ornery to sell out.
Yeah. 100%.
We had one person who was very funny when that whole thing blew up. Somebody was saying, well, I hope they learned their lesson. Somebody who I guess has watched the show for a while said, no, I've seen this before. They're going to double and triple down.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're going to double down. They're just going to double and triple down. Yeah. Excuse me. Man, I've done a lot of talking today for someone who's coming down with a little sore throat.
Oh, the kid get you sick?
Yeah, a little bit. That's all right. That's what kids are for. Folks, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate you all. We will see you back Thursday at noon Eastern. Special time for Thursday. That should be the last time adjustment that we have to make for a while. So Thursday at noon Eastern, you can join our Substack, our newsletter, so that you always know when and where we are going live. You can join as a paid member, or you could join for free and get the newsletter. So thank you to Jake for being in the booth. Thank you all for watching tonight. Pleasure hanging out with you all. Doubleheader stream today, so we will take tomorrow off, and we will be back on Thursday, September 12th, 12 p.m. Eastern. So once again, special time Thursday at noon. Until then, thanks for this evening. Be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.